Hello, hello, beautiful humans. Thank you again for joining Teach Jenn Tech. Today we have Anthony on the show, and I think you were the second episode.
Number
I don't
two.
even remember. You were number two.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! Please introduce yourself and what we're going to be learning about today.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be back. This was a really fun show to be on the first time, and I've gotten to watch kind of the progression of it over the last. We were just talking about this. You said it was like a month and like it's a month and 2 weeks, maybe, so a month and a half about since we started, I think. And you've already done a ton of shows, like 15, 20, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think I'm right around there.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like, I don't know anyone who usually like started streaming just like that many, especially doing a show like this. Like, most people are kind of like a slow roll into it. So yeah.
I was like full commit, 4 days a week. We got this.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So yeah, great job with that. And you've gotten to meet a lot of like my friends and a lot of people that I don't know also. So there's been guests that I had never been aware of or had seen their stuff either. So that was awesome. So it's cool that like you have like you built up a network already, you know?
And for everybody watching, it was like two main people that like gave me the courage to start. It was Ramon gave me like the idea of peer programming. And then Anthony was like, yeah, you should definitely do it. It's a great way of learning. And then I met Yere, who was episode 1. Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, I'm talking about you, Yere. And I met him on a Wednesday after I met Ramon and Anthony. And he's like, cool, let's do it on Friday. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, we're just, I'm starting this. Cool. And yes, that was 5 or 6 weeks ago, which is just so crazy. So thank you for.
So what are the most important things you think you learned? Like, if you had like some high bullet points,
high level things. Yeah. I will say I think that Mishko summed it up the best on everything is very, very simple. It's repetition and building upon it that is what makes any of it work. Like, he was talking about how he told his kids this, and I'm like, that's actually really, really great advice, in the fact of a lot of this isn't too complicated. It's more of, it looks really scary, and then being able to ask people to fill in the gaps is probably one of the biggest things. And that even like over 50 years of knowledge on one of the streams, people may not see the error of not having an S or having an extra S, because these type of things happen to everyone. And I can do it even though I'm dyslexic. And I will say that since doing so much more in JavaScript, I can now tell a lot more of the differences between JavaScript and HTML and CSS, where on episode 1 with Yare, I was like, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like I tried to do it. So it's and everybody has their own way of doing things, even though this is a very, very broad, like, there's so many people in this industry, everybody has their own unique way of doing it, which I'm learning as well. But things are starting to click. Repetition is key.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And you've also gotten to see different topics build on each other, because you did React with me on our episode, and then later you did a Next project. And so what was that like? Do you feel like that made React easier? Do you feel like it made it more complicated?
One thing that I would say, from comparing to, like, I took a semester of CSS or something, I took a semester of some coding language, is I've been given very complicated concepts, and then it mostly makes sense, and then seeing it from somebody else's point of view can confuse it and then also make it make more sense. In the fact of, I learned React with you, then the Next.js with a React wrapper for web payments for Square with Bakari, and then having what up, Ben? And then having Richard on from Square. He had me do it just the React app, which made what you taught me make more sense, and also distinguishing between Next and React and how the wrapper worked. So it builds upon each other, but it also, the frameworks still get a little fuzzy. But sometime this month, I'm also going to have my first look at Python, not because I want to learn a ton about Python. Like, I'm not thinking that I want to go that way, but I know nothing about it. So how do I know that JavaScript is like my jam? That's kind of funny. But how do I know that that's what I want to do unless I see and understand what other things are?
Totally. Yeah. If you try out Python, you're going to find that if you want to do web development, like you're going to do JavaScript the vast majority of the time. Like you can do like a Python backend and then have a JavaScript front end with like Django. But most people who are doing Python are doing like data science stuff or machine learning or things like that. So it's good to learn other languages like at all, for sure. I definitely would encourage you to do that. I would say there's a certain amount of learning one language first before like learning a second language. So if you try and learn to program while learning multiple languages, that can be really confusing. So that would be the only thing I would like kind of be aware of going into that. But the thing you're going to find with JavaScript and Python is actually very, very similar comparatively to like really crazy languages like functional languages and stuff like that. They're actually pretty much like if you know one, you can figure out the other one like pretty dang quickly. But
I just learned about Go last night.
Yeah, and Go's another one. And learning a second language is great for fleshing out where and when you might use the first language by contrast. Yeah, exactly. You'll know why you would use JavaScript one place and Python for a different place. Yeah,
and I'm excited about that. And I've found that there's also a lot of people that have been in like a mentor in some type of coding school. And that's where they're getting most excited about coming on the show in the future. And I think that's a great way to also see like why people love coding camps, and then also the difference of almost like one-on-one tutoring, but yet having other people ask questions too.
Yeah, that's what makes boot camps hard, is that sometimes you'll have one teacher for a class of like 20, 40, sometimes 100 students. Like when I was at Lambda School, we had literally like 150 people in some of these classes. It was didn't really work out well if you're someone who needed that kind of individual personalized attention, which I think a lot of people do. And it's like education doesn't scale. Like I've said this before as part of the problems with like just mass public education in general. It's just an inherently hard thing to do. Like it's an unsolved problem. And so if you can figure out a way to get like a whole bunch of really experienced people to come in and teach you one-on-one like 4 times a week, like it's so smart.
I will say that one of the biggest things I've learned, and thank you for helping, and one of the bigger reasons I'm excited about today, but thank you for helping, like being part of the beginning. And like one of the things that you said to me was about consistency. And that's why I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to do it these 4 days a week and at this time. So if somebody can't make it, oh, well, I'll just either not do a show that day or do like a co-working session. But it was also the fact that building this content very slowly. So doing video is very, very second nature to me. I'm like, cool, I can do it nonstop, whatever, no problem. Writing blogs is harder for me, but I know it's something that I want to level up on. So I'm like, cool, I can start doing that. And then also being able to start contributing to open source and showing a portfolio on Git.
You're also a speaker on Twitter Spaces and your podcast.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, I do that.
Look at that.
And Ben said, yeah, boot camps and education in general is severely limited by both the experience and the priorities of the teachers. If, for instance, the teachers find testing complex, they're less likely to have material on testing. Problem is that reinforces that testing or whatever is hard or less critical.
Yes, this is the thing I do. So
100%.
Ben's calling me out, and he's totally right about it, because I do not write many tests in my example apps. So that is always a thing that you should bring on someone to teach you just testing for sure. It's very important.
That I am looking forward to.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe Postman would be good at that.
So there's a difference between writing tests and like testing something. This is as far as confusing, is that writing a test is writing a program to basically run your program and feed it different inputs to see if the inputs are what you think they should be. Right. And that involves writing code to do that. Whereas having a tool like Postman, you're like hitting an API, doing a thing, and seeing what comes back. So it's kind of like testing, but it's slightly different because one's like an automated thing and one's like a person kind of running through a certain flow. So usually you have to try and write tests that are going to be able to test like the logic in your program, and then hopefully some sort of end-to-end testing to like test the whole thing together. And then you actually have to like go through the program yourself and the steps of what it's going to do and like verify. It's like what I was talking about with the shopping cart thing you had to do with Square. Like you had to go through this whole flow to like make this purchase. And so along the way, there'll be all those different steps you want to write tests for. And then you still, at the end of the day, have to actually walk through the thing to make sure it works. Even if all your tests pass, something might break that you didn't write a test to account for. So testing is really complicated. This is why I leave it out of my tutorials, because I think it deserves its own material that's separate from mine. But it's it's
okay.
Complicated.
Good to know. I will add that on my list of things to learn, because I think that and like protocols, and there's so much out there, and it's so, even as Ben, like when he was on the show, said that, you know, accessibility, it's such a wide net too.
Yeah.
And yes, Ben has made that complaint before, that there's a lack of accessibility in education in boot camps instead of testing. So it's definitely a structural problem. And I agree. That is a big reason that I failed high school and also went to way too many colleges. So
yeah. By the way, Ben is giving you a very hot tip right here.
Yes, please put me in touch. I love.
Should flash on the screen so
okay,
others can see that.
There we go.
Yeah, she's a test boss for sure. Yeah, that's definitely the person you should get in touch with.
Yes.
Don't worry, Ben. I didn't think you were specifically calling me out. I think it accidentally called me out. Don't worry. Because like there's certain things that, you know, there's always things we know we can improve on. So it's like, I know that my educational material doesn't have enough stuff about testing, and so that's why it's like, at least I know that, because then I can like hopefully one day like fix that. There's so many things to do, but you can't really do it all at once. So it's like chipping away piece by piece of like, what is the next thing I can get better at and kind of improve my whole overall deal.
I am curious about this before we dive into the README stuff. I learned about like the 3 C's in DevRel of like community, content, or coding. And normally people are really good at one or two of them.
The third one should be product, not coding. I think coding doesn't really quite make that distinction very clear, because it's about, there's the community part, there's the content part, and there's actually like the thing itself that is like the community is around and the content is created about. Like that's whatever like the company is actually selling usually, or the open source project that's actually being done. So coding kind of, because you're still coding when you're doing content stuff, because you're coding projects usually with the products, but you're not like writing the code of the product itself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's a clearer distinction, but I get that 3-pillar thing, like that's you're on the money with that. I just think there's kind of making it 3 C's,
coding and product, because then it still equals 3 C's.
Yeah. Like so if you go to whatisdevrel.com, have you seen this site?
Yes. Yeah. There is so much goodness out there.
Yeah, because they're the ones who do community content products. That's like, and many people have already kind of made this distinction before. So there's they didn't really invent it, but they I think have distilled it in the most explainable way. So that's usually the one that I recommend people check out.
And I think that's something that I've learned is anyone like going into the role, I'm a lot better at the community and the content, yet coding or product, however you want to say it, is something that I need to level up on. And that's, I think, the beauty of just like learning in general is realizing what you're good at and then going, cool, I can level up on that. Even though that may never be my like strong part of, you know, my skill set, I can at least be really good at it. Maybe not as good as other things. So I think that's really cool, talking about the testing there too. And yeah, so what are we learning today?
Yeah, so today what we're going to be learning is I wanted to talk a little bit about documentation and like why it's kind of useful or important, and a way to kind of get into your workflows, hopefully as painless as possible. And you actually said you're getting a team on to talk about documentation, and it used to be called Divio, but they just rebranded. I didn't actually know this. What are they called?
Oh, I don't know. I have it bookmarked. Hold on.
Yeah, so what this is there's going to be another follow-up episode that I'm definitely going to be at, 'cause it's going to be super interesting. They have a theory of docs where they basically break down like the 4 different categories that documentation can be. Yeah, this is the one. So scroll down a little bit to the yeah, that right there. So you have tutorials, which are about like walking you through and like end-to-end experience that hopefully will teach you generally how a thing works. Whereas a how-to guide is something where it's giving you something specific to do that you can accomplish and that you want to do, that is like a self-contained kind of task. And then reference would be just like, you think of like a glossary, like just a list of terms and definitions and stuff like that. And then explanation is like just someone's actually writing out words to explain a concept, whether that's like, again, a term or something you need to just like get about programming or whatever you're documenting. So I find this is a really, really good breakdown of the different things that you need in like a whole docs, like a doc website. But this is not what we're going to be doing today. This is like how to structure like a larger docs project. Whereas I want to show you just like, what do you need for like one single useful README? Like, how do you write a README that will like get you from 0 to 1 in the course of that README? And this is useful because it will allow you to build the project again or share it with other people who want to know how you built a thing. So I'm just going to walk you through the first thing we did, the first project we did, but we're going to write it out first in actual Markdown.
Okay. Where do I need to go? Because you told me that we were going to use a tool, and I don't remember
first,
what.
We should talk about Markdown a little bit. You said you have some experience with Markdown.
Yes.
And so how would you explain Markdown?
How would I explain it? Oh, that is, wait, wrong buttons. There we go. See if I can get the live stream going right. I don't know if I have a good way of explaining it other than, is Markdown part of HTML?
That's a good question. That's like the key question you need to ask. What Markdown is it's a lightweight syntax to write something that will be transformed into HTML. So what you're writing is you're creating like headers, and you're creating like text, and then there's like links, and there's can be bullet points or bolded text or sections or anything, or tables, and all that eventually ends up as a website in HTML. But writing HTML, like as you can see, like you have like the opening and closing tags, and then they all have their own tag names, and it's a lot to write if you don't actually write that like just quickly while like you're thinking of it. So Markdown was invented as a more like human friendly way to write this basically, and Markdown's old. Like Markdown's like decades old, and it's just kind of constantly had different variations that people had their own kind of specific versions of, and now we're getting to a point where it's getting to be more standardized because of things like GitHub and websites like Hashnode and Dev2. And there's all these places now where you can write Markdown. You can write Markdown in Notion. You can write Markdown in Discord. And it's like really pretty awesome that it's gotten to be such a widespread kind of tool. And once you learn it, you can write structured documents very, very quickly, because you can create the headers and like the skeleton kind of outline of it very easily, and then kind of fill in the blanks from there. So I usually will start out like if I'm writing an article for like Prismic, they have you first write an outline. And so like you'll write an outline, and then that outline becomes like the headers of the blog post.
Really quick, for anybody that's like super, super new to Markdown and like wondering what we're talking about.
Yeah, at this point we should start writing stuff. So
I just Googled it. So that way, because like I'm pretty sure it's actually this cheat sheet really shows what they all are. So that way, if you're like,
so stop on the first part. So just this right here is going to be the vast majority of what you're going to do when you're writing Markdown. You're going to have headings, then you're going to have the ability to like make bold or italics, and then you can do quotes, which just kind of makes it offset a little bit on the screen. And then you have numbers for lists and bullet points for unordered lists. And then you have backticks to make code look like code. So that's when you see like a word from code written in like documentation or like a file name, and that looks different from the other text. That's what's happening there. And then like links and images.
Sweet.
And then look at the extended syntax. I want to see if we're going to do any of this. So tables are occasionally useful. They don't always look good on mobile, which is part of the problem, but
Okay,
they
that's
are
good to know.
really good for like if you're on a desktop, which is if you're coding something, that's frequently the way it's going to be. But you don't always want to have like a really, really, really long table because it may go like totally off the screen.
Okay.
But most of this other stuff we won't really need to go over today.
Okay.
But you were talking about how you were using Markdown. That was like Spotlight's Markdown.
Yeah, Stoplight's Markdown. Just as one thing, I feel like we definitely need to look at the emoji one, just because I live by emojis. That is how.
Yeah. So the cool thing about what we're gonna do is that you'll be able to just put it in an emoji normally, and then GitHub will figure out how to turn that into Markdown for you. I'm pretty sure.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Where am I going now?
So you're going to gist.github.com. And you'll need to be logged into your GitHub account.
Just like
so
this?
With a G, like GitHub.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
GitHub.com. There we go. Hey, I'm still logged in. Thank goodness.
All righty, cool. All right, this is a gist. Now, this isn't necessarily the nicest way to write Markdown or write like anything really. Your code editor is usually going to be the best place to do that. But
okay,
for the sake of what's happening here, I want to at least make sure you've like done this once so you can like write another gist if you ever need to. And sometimes what I would do is I'll write something in like just a file on my computer in my editor, and then I'll eventually just copy paste the whole thing back into gist so I can like look at what it'll actually look like. But this way we can kind of like get some like iterations with just actually using the GitHub gist itself. This is a really easy way of both like quickly writing something down and saving it, then also having a link you can share with someone. So if you want to like write a couple steps out, you need someone else to help you like test or debug, you can do that in a gist. You can just send them the gist link, then they'll be able to see it and just like work with it. You can put code samples in there. You can do anything.
Okay.
All right. So what we're gonna do is there's first a gist description. So we're gonna give this a name, and we're gonna say what was the name of the episode? Deploy React to Vercel with Vite.
What did we call it? I don't remember. You just said it, but I was like,
yeah, it was just say deploy React and then get rid of at to Vercel with Vite. Yeah, good enough. Yep. And then on the file name, where it says file name including extension. So here you gotta make sure. So this is because you could just make this just like a JavaScript file. This could be anything, but if you make it a Markdown file, then it like will make it look like a Markdown thing. So do index.md. That's what I call all of mine. You can give them a name if you want, but I prefer just having a name as the title, and then the file is just index.md.
I feel like you're like setting it up that I can't put like Anthony is cool or anything like that. Like everybody else gets a really cool file name, but all right, you'll be the one that doesn't get one. Whatever.
I mean, if you want to, like, it's not. I don't know if it really matters.
It does. It does. And are they dashes? And they're always dashes.
Dashes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go. Yep. I haven't used cool yet, I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Now, so this is the beginning of our page. So you can think of it like HTML, where you're going to need an H1. So we'll start by creating an H1. So that's going to be just a single hashtag or $. Yep. And then space. And then make it just the title that you call the thing. So deploy React to Vercel Vite. You can just copy paste that.
And this one.
Yep. All right. And then hit 2 spaces. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. Back up and then 2, and then hit 2 enters. I mean, yeah. There we go. So it's fun mouth coding. Okay, and now
it's been a challenge for everybody. I dig it. I'm learning a lot easier.
Yeah, so just write out like a little description like of what you are doing here. I will let you do this one instead of like telling you what to write, because you've done this. So see if you can just give like a 1 or 2 sentence description of like what this is and what it does.
Okay. I think the part that I'm getting stuck on is what we did with Vite, is what I don't remember.
Okay. Like I remember. You don't really have to describe what Vite does. The most important thing is that you're just saying that Vite is what you're using with React. That's the more important thing. It's not really that you have to like explain what Vite does so much as that people, what they need to know is that this is using like the Vite template and it's not using create React app. So like the last time you used React from just the other episode or two ago, they had to use create React app, and that's what generated the React app, right? You wrote create React app and then it created your React app for you. Whereas what we did is we used Vite to do the same thing, to create a React app for us.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. And that's where I think I was getting really lost. So thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's pretty good. So it's not translating it via Vercel, it's deploying via Vercel. Yeah.
Yay.
So have it say use Vite to create React app, then deploy via Vercel. All right, that's great. That's perfect. So now let's just first look at this so we can kind of see what we've done and what it looks like. So scroll down a little bit to where it says create secret gist and click the little drop down arrow and say create public gist. Yep, and then create that. Okay, great. So there you go. So you notice how the H1 is a lot bigger than the text, right? So that's the markdown in action. It's taking that markdown and it's actually rendering the markdown for you. So that's pretty great. And the real thing you want is you want the ability to have your editor and what your markdown is rendering kind of on screen at the same time. So there's all these like markdown like coding things, like HedgeDoc is a big one. So there's lots of ways to do this. Like VS Code itself can actually like do a split screen thing where you can kind of see the two side by side. So let's yeah, now that we've done this, we're gonna come back to this, but we should really do this through an editor. Let's go and open your Visual Studio Code. Yeah, and you are in a project, so you should get out of that and like open a fresh project. Yeah.
Just new file, right?
Yeah.
Built in. Sure.
Cool. And so now just go back and copy paste what you already had from the first gist. So click edit, or actually click raw. Let me show you this. So if you click raw, then you can see it just the markdown, and then you can just grab that right there. Yeah.
Select language or open a different editor.
Don't worry about that. So just paste, and then save this. And you're gonna want to call it the same file name you called the gist.
Okay, give me. It's weird doing it through this way.
Yeah, we could have done it through the terminal. It's all the same
like
at the end of the day.
I've gotten used to it doing it through the terminal. No, I need to make you a folder. New folder. Create.
Okay, great. And so we're just doing this. Actually, this is going to be important. We need to name this file readme in all caps .md.
Okay. Well, I hit enter. Where'd it go?
It's in Baraka's dope.
Damn it. Okay, there we go. And you want to name this one readme?
Yeah, all caps .md. Yep. Yeah, that is because if you do that, when we put this repo up on GitHub, then it will display the readme on the front page. So that's why when you go see projects and they have that readme, you can just see it if you scroll down on their repo. That's because they wrote a markdown file that's called readme.md.
Okay, that makes sense. Very cool.
Yep.
All right.
So you should quit out of this and reopen it because you see there's that slash through on top because it's confused because you moved it around.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if this is going to open because I haven't done it like this. It did. Yay. Oh,
That's brackets.
I didn't even know
So
I
this is
had.
part of the problem is that when you double click something, it just opens the default app. So your default app for .markdown files was set to that program instead of VS Code. So yeah, so what is brackets? Is that another editor?
Yeah, I probably downloaded it at some point. Yeah. Apparently I did because it's there, but I don't know why I have brackets.
I've not heard of brackets. It's a source code editor focused on web development, created by Adobe. Huh, interesting.
I actually haven't heard it be used like in the community. I've only heard of VS Code.
No, literally 99% of the people you're going to meet use VS Code, and then 1% of people use WebStorm, and we'll talk very, very long about why you should use WebStorm and not VS Code, but almost everyone uses VS Code at this point.
All right. So I got my README going. Open folder. Fine. Open folder. Desktop. Good folder. Open. There.
Cool. All
it
right.
Seems happier now.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. Now let's add a H2. And then space. And so the first step is going to be create React app. Yeah. And there'll be, some people will do like title like that. And I think that's what we should do here. Some people will kind of write out like a kind of phrase or sentence that is then like just only capitalized in the beginning. So what you're kind of doing with headers may shift a bit depending on whether you're like writing a blog post or writing like an outline for like documentation. So kind of keep that in mind, but there's going to be different ways to do this. And there's like no necessarily like right or wrong way. Like this could be longer, shorter. It's kind of whatever is going to, what I think is important here is that people first start by writing something that makes sense to them. And then they can worry about if there's a way they can refine that to make it more understandable to everyone, then that's good. But the first thing you should do is make sure it actually makes sense to you, because it's most important that you'll be able to read it back and do the steps again and understand it. And if you do that, I find usually that then means most other people can understand it as like a kind of knock-on effect of that. Because if you are able to write it clearly enough to make sense to yourself, then as long as you can write it in like an orderly kind of way, then people can kind of follow along with the thought process. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm going to be probably way more detailed on it, just so that way, like if I'm going back to episode 2, when I had no idea what we were doing, that version of me would understand what I was doing. Like
that's when you get into eventually writing a blog post. So that's where once you've kind of explained it to that extent, and anyone from 0 to 1 can understand it based on just what you've written, that's when like, you've written a really good blog post. That's why writing to your previous self is a good way to do that. And a lot of people have that kind of thought. I certainly do.
I definitely didn't even like, I think it was actually the day from talking to you, I did Control+C equals to stop terminal, but it just stops the server running for localhost, and then CD to change directory, because I was like, I know these things, but I couldn't remember them. So, yes. All right. So I got my React app, create React app.
Then make 2 more lines. And then go ahead and write a little description of like the first step of this. So I would say, so I'll say what I would write here. So I would say, generate boilerplate. Yep. Boilerplate would be 1 word, I think. Yep. And then React app. Actually, sorry. Generate boilerplate application using the React Vite template. Yeah, and then period. Cool. So that'll be good for now. Now we're going to actually put the command that does this. So we're going to start with, this is the important part, because this is where you're going to be doing code stuff. The code stuff is what's kind of most important. Like everything we're doing here is about the commands and the code, because you want to actually be able to use this document for like, you want the code to work. That's really important.
Right.
It's really important. So you're going to do 3 backticks, and that's not the right backtick. Yeah. So this is the one next to the number 1 on your keyboard. Yeah, great. And so you can do it where you just have the 3 backticks, but what's better to do in the vast majority of cases is to then say, what kind of code is this? So you would write like JavaScript or Python or any of those languages, but we're not writing JavaScript yet, because the first thing we're writing is the command to generate it. So we're going to write bash. Yeah, because it's a bash command. And this is, some people write shell or sh, and it partly depends on what the platform that you're going to be putting this markdown on expects you to write. So I find this works in the most cases, but there's some kind of weird subtleties to this, but this is all kind of information that's not super important right now. So
okay, good to know though.
Create a space. Sorry, not space. Do it again. Do a return line, and now write yarn space create space, and then create. Sorry, I need to make sure I'm doing this right. Let me go to the Vite. Actually, go to the Vite.js documentation. So I would show you. If I was doing this from scratch, I had no idea what I was doing. This is how I do this. So go to vitejs.com and pull this up on screen so people can see it.
Yeah, I will. I'm grabbing it. It's loading. Because I would also...
sorry. Vitejs.org. Probably no. Hold on. Let me figure this out. Vitejs.dev. That's the one. Yeah, Google is usually the best way to find stuff like that. And then go to Get Started. Yeah. And then scroll down. Just keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Yeah, so you want the one with the React template. So you don't want those first 3. You want a little bit down. You want yarn create Vite. Yeah, that so the yarn one. So grab that whole thing. Actually, copy paste the one that says yarn. So only the one that says yarn.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, just that line. That's all you need.
Interesting. I don't know what Grammarly was trying to tell me.
Yeah, and then delete all that. Yep. There's a couple things you need to change here, because what this is doing is this is not what we did. This is creating a Vue app. So where it says Vue, change that to React. Yep. And then where it says template Vue, change that to React. Yep. And then do on the line below that, do 3 more backticks. And then save. Okay, so this is why I call this readme-driven development. This is like technically not the exact term being used correctly, because that meant more so when you're building like a whole library with like APIs and stuff. You would want to like write it and explain it to how you're eventually going to code it, and then you code it to make the thing make sense. But the way I'm doing this is I'm just walking through a series of steps that you're going to first write down and then do. And so once you've done that, then any step you're doing, you already know is written down. And so that means then once you've done it correctly, you know the way it was written down was done correctly, and you can go back to that example and do it. And you know it's going to work consistently the way it did last time.
I'm making this as a note.
Yep. So if you want to write a note to yourself, you should not make it a 2-header thing. It should.
Well, I'm thinking for like somebody that's brand new, like for brand new, like reminding them of, hey, if you're using Terminal, make sure you're putting it in your code folder, for example, like those type of things.
So that is something where if I'm making
this for me, the one that went through on day 2, like episode 2, I would need that. If it's for me when
what if they don't even know what that means, a proper code folder, if they like that hasn't even been explained to them. So you like have to explain them what it means to like create just like open anything to do anything.
Yeah, I'm putting it there so that way I remember to go back and fill it out.
Okay.
Not that I need to fill it out right now, but
I would be curious how you're going to explain that, but go for it.
I will show you after today.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, this is why also like that's a good point. So for me, I also will include like if we weren't creating this app, it would be like creating like a blank directory or something. But then you like have the CD command to actually like get into it and start doing it. That's a step a lot of people skip. So that's for me, it's like the steps that if you skip them, will people be able to like fill in the blanks? Those usually you should assume no, they're not gonna be able to fill in the blanks. You should kind of put that in there. So that's partly a question like experience level and what you need to put in. But for the most part, being more explicit is good. So like I think that's fine if you're gonna try and explain that, because like I said, being more explicit is always good.
And yeah, that one is just to remind me to go in and make it more explanatory as I go. So
for me, actually, my code folder is just the first thing that happens when I open my terminal. Like I just have that be my code folder. So every time I just open my terminal, I can just start going, and then I have a bunch of projects in there, and I just periodically go through and just like clean them out.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I don't like having code projects on my computer. I like, for the most part, to have all stuff I've done just be on GitHub repos for the most part. So my work is always being saved. I don't have like a ton of work just on my computer that could disappear or that other people can't see. So that's why I'll usually have a project I'll create, I'll work with it for a little bit. Eventually it'll end up on a GitHub repo in like a day or two, and then I delete it off my computer. So if I want to work with it again, I'll clone it down again and then do the things I need to do, then push the changes back up and then delete it off my computer. And I find like it, for me, it helps keep sanity in like both my brain and my computer, to allow me to like have this all compartmentalized, so I'm not having these long-term projects with lots of work accumulating that isn't always being like easily shareable or like documentable or stuff like that, because you get much more wary of that when it's like your entire life's work, it becomes like digital artifacts.
Yeah, and Ben just said readmes expect folks can fill in the blanks can be such an obstacle.
Yeah, and this is why getting into this process now of writing these out and like testing them yourself and going through and making sure, like writing a thing out, you can go to it a month later and then try it and see if it still works, or if you miss steps. And that's where usually you'll find the steps you missed the first time, and you'll refine it and make it a little bit better. So these are things you can iterate on over time and constantly improve and make better and better.
I feel like you just volunteered yourself to come on the show again, like the end of September, to see if we can actually do this based on it.
Yeah, and what I'm showing you here, this is my exact process. This is how I build everything that I build. So
very cool.
So run this command now, like copy and paste it and run this exact command.
And that's actually what made me think of that I have to change my folder.
So, and this is also why you shouldn't have your code folder on your desktop. You should have it in your home directory. So when you open the terminal, you would just do CD into code folder. And you should also make code folder all lowercase, that way you're not always having to capitalize every time you type it out.
Oh my goodness.
Just saying.
You're like also making me forget what I was doing. And I think like that's a big reason why I would want to put all of these steps in there is
but this is specific to you.
Right.
This is only because you have to go through those steps. That's why if you have your code folder, if you didn't have a code folder at all, none of those steps would have needed to be done. So that's just specific to your setup that requires doing this, that other people wouldn't necessarily have to do.
Right. But I guess like something that I'm wondering, and I'll look around afterwards, is if there's a way or something that people say for super noobs on the README.
Super noobs need to like watch a video of someone doing it. Like some of the stuff you just can't really explain it in words because there's too much context associated with it, because you don't even know what kind of editor they're using. Like you don't know any of that kind of stuff. So
okay. So running it. Cool. It's been run.
Great. So now go back to your Markdown file. And within those same 3 black ticks, create another line. Yeah, and then do CD into my React app. So you need to write out exactly the same.
Like what it's called?
So the way it was created the first time? No. So see how the first command is yarn, create beat, then the name. Yeah, there you go. Yep, and then run that command in your terminal. Yep, and then I will usually like write both those out, and then like if I was having you kind of do each one by one, and then now you're gonna do yarn, just the word yarn, and then space. Sorry, not Jesus. Back up line. Yarn, and then yarn space dev, and then run those 2 commands. Awesome. Now what I would do at this point is I would create a link in my Markdown file to what the local host is going to be. So if you are following along, you'd be able to just like click it and it would instantly open. So copy that. Yep, you got it. And then we're going to do another space or another line. So not in the code blocks outside of the. Yeah, so at this point, we're going to be writing text again. So create one more line, and say open in, and then 2 brackets. So open bracket, close bracket. So the square brackets. Yeah, there you go. And then paste that. And then go one to the right. It's like, and then add parentheses. Yep, and then copy again. Or paste again, I mean. Yeah. So what I would do here, just kind of distinguish these two for myself. In the first half, I would delete http:// Yeah, delete all of that. And then delete the final closing slash also after 5173. Yeah. So what's happening here is there's the link, which is the part in the parentheses, and then there's what shows the text for the link. So we could have that say anything we wanted, but we want it to also be like descriptive, so someone reading it knows what it is and they click it. And then just put a so this is the point where you could explain this however you want. You can say open, or actually get rid of the in. Now I realize, just have it say open local host in your browser of choice.
Browser.
Cool, that works too. And then period. Great. And now let's actually open this in that local host. There you go.
Yay.
Yeah, so if you were doing like a blog post or something, what I would usually do at this point, and we don't need to do this, like I would take a screenshot and then like actually have an image also as well, because I want someone who is reading the blog post or like kind of following along to be able to kind of visually see what's actually happening. But this is not really, right now we're not creating a blog post. We're just kind of, I just want to walk you through creating like a simple kind of series of steps so we can flesh it out more as we want. So let's not do that right now.
Okay.
And go out, click out of that. Actually, no, sorry, don't click out of that. Let's make that only part of your screen. So make that like, scoot it way over. Yeah. Yep. Okay, and now go to where your project is. Okay, so the way we did that, actually, so save first. Yeah, so open up so you can see the files again. Yeah, so we did this actually a little bit wrong right now. We have the README is not inside of our folder, so just drag the README into that folder. Yeah, there you go.
Don't get angry at me again. Okay, thank you.
Cool, sweet. Okay, that is all good. Now let's go to your SRC folder. Yep, and then app.jsx. Yep. And then do what we did last time where we get rid of the use state and a bunch of other stuff. So let's start by deleting line 6.
Is it line 6 down or just line 6?
Line 6 and 7. Yep. And then delete line 1. Yep. And then scroll down a little bit. Okay. Scroll up a little bit so you can see all the big chunk. Okay. So let's delete line 16, or actually 17 to 23. Do that first. Did I do that right? And then delete that div too. Okay, and then now let's just kind of give it our own H1. Okay, so give it the H1 is actually that you give the H1 of the README. So you can just copy and paste it from the README if you want.
It's what I'm doing.
I mean, you should, because this is also the thing is you want consistency here. So the more you can like copy paste stuff, the less likely something is to change or break or like anything like that. So like you should like embrace copy pasting. It's a good thing.
I've been learning too.
Yeah, so just grab exactly what's in the H1 deploy React to Vercel with Vite and just copy and paste that without the hashtag in front. Yep. And then take the description you had and you can make that the P tag. Yeah, you have an extra space on that line, which is not important but bugs me anyway. On line 3, there's an extra space if you go over to the very end of the line.
Oh.
Just wrap around. So yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Ta-da!
Awesome. And then you do 2 spaces so it's indented correctly. So 2 spaces before use. Great. And now save. And then that all looks good. Great. Let's grab all of the code in the app.jsx file. So copy it all and then go back to the README and then go make some new lines. And this time we're going to do, go back 1 line. Yeah, we're going to do 3 backticks. And we're not going to write JavaScript. And the reason why is because if you look at the file, it is not .js. It is going to be JSX. And don't put a space there. And get rid of that. Don't put a space at the end or at the beginning of JSX. Yeah. Yep. And then space. Sorry, line. And this is not something everyone does, but I think this is a really, really good habit to be in. I like to write a comment at the top of all of my code blocks that tells you what is the specific directory in this project that contains this code example. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Write 2 / and then go space. And then you're going to write src, all in lowercase.
Okay.
And /, and then capital A, and then pp, so app.jsx. So that is the file that this code is in. Now you're not going to, I don't put my-react-app and then the src, because you can assume that everyone has their own project with their own name. And what you want to tell them is just like where it is in the project itself. So when you're in the project itself, you have the src folder and you have the app.jsx. So that's where I had you first go to do this. So they need to know if you're going to show them a block of code, where is that code? So that's why this will ensure that even if you haven't explained it somewhere in the text, they can just look at the code blocks itself and kind of get some understanding of like what's actually happening in that code. So this is something that I've seen some docs do and a lot of docs not. And I think every doc should do this. And it makes a really big difference.
Okay. And then pasting the rest of.
And then do one more space. There's a stylus. I think some people will not put a line or line break. Guy, it's only like 5 times.
Line break. Got it.
Okay. and then copy paste it, and then do 3 backticks. Okay. There you go. Cool. So the idea being with that is if you were walking through this again, I will show code blocks when things change usually. So if I need to change something, I'll have a code block. So I'll know that as I'm like following along with instructions, I'll first generate a project. I'll do some commands. Now they're showing me code blocks. It means I need to go into my project, look at the code blocks, and get that into the thing where it needs to get into to make the change happen. So does that all make sense?
It does.
Cool.
I think it's going to take practice of then reading them.
Yeah, no, totally. And everyone does it differently. Like the way I'm showing you right now is not always going to be the same other way other people do it, but I find this usually works pretty well in terms of giving something that is at least reproducible. That's the most important thing to me, because someone could follow along with these steps and not really know how to code and still do all the things as long as they know baseline stuff, like how to open a terminal and how to like do stuff like that. So now that we have this, that's all we did in the video. So that's all we've done to create this application. And the next thing is to be deploying it.
Okay. And that's when we went to Vercel, right?
So, yeah. So I'm going to try something actually. Let's do this. So first go back to our README and do 2 spaces. Let's just get our Markdown good first. And they're going to do another H2, which is going to be deploy to Vercel. and then go down two lines. Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna try and have you do this with the CLI this time. So let's do, this is where if I had someone do this, I would write a message that links them to a place where they can get the CLI installed. So let's first figure out where that link is. So just Google Vercel CLI. Yep.
So that means, hold on, I'm going to grab this then and go up here. And would I do it as notes then, like this?
No, not necessarily. Well, so I would have it be explained right still where we were already. So because at this point, it's not really a concern up until this point. Sometimes people will put the requirements at the beginning, but for what we're doing here, I think it makes more sense to just like build a thing and then be like, now we're going to deploy. If you already know how to deploy somewhere, you can go do that anywhere. But if you want to do it this way, here's like instructions to do that.
Okay, so wow. And I have the link.
Okay, and now let's like write something out of like how we want to explain it. So I'd say I'm like something of the effect to like go to this link to for instructions to download the Vercel CLI.
Then I would be able to do this, right? So it shows what it is, and then put this one in here, maybe.
I'll do it, yeah. And then hit a period. So you should change that a little bit. So it should be go to link for download instructions or go to link for Vercel CLI download instructions. Yes, change that to just 4, and then get rid of the 2, and then copy paste Vercel CLI. Yeah, and put it before download instructions.
I feel like this is going to be what drives everybody insane is my grammar on these. So
as long as it's as long as it's grammatically correct, that's the most important thing. So people, it's because you're going for clarity and understandability here. So there's gonna be lots of ways you could phrase this that could be like correct, and it's just like a matter of taste, but there's also some things that are just like you want to make sure you kind of like, because otherwise other people are going back and they might be kind of confused, and it's just a kind of a good practice. And some people will write docs who English is not like their first language, and so like and that's totally valid. That's why like you should always try and help people like make their docs more clear, but also be aware of like where people are coming from, and like don't like try and put them down for having like small little mistakes like that in their stuff.
So I would just do the NPM, right?
Yeah, let's see if that works.
I did an NPX the other day. That was fun.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, so NPX is the same as using yarn the way we've been doing it. You gotta do it with sudo. So this is saying the permissions is denying us. This means that you're trying to download this, but your computer needs you to be in root access for it. So sudo, like that's how you ever used sudo before?
I think we had to do this last time.
Yeah, I had you use sudo once, so I just told you to do that, and we were over text, so it probably didn't make any sense. So that's what sudo is. That's why sudo asks you for your passwords. That's why sudo is only something you should ever run when you're downloading something that you trust. And like you can trust Vercel. It's a giant, massive company. They're not going to load random code on your computer to mine Bitcoin. Some stuff on NPM will, though. So don't ever just do this and download random packages or like what you just think the name of the package is, because there's like squatters who will find packages with slight typos and then try and like put stuff in that. So when people make typos, they'll accidentally download the thing they didn't mean to download. It's a whole thing, the whole supply chain thing with this.
Geez.
So this is fine. What we're doing right now is totally safe.
I don't even know how to spell sudo.
Okay, so it's not spelled like the word sudo. It's sudo. Yeah.
And then install
and
it.
then that exact same command again. And it'll ask you for your password.
Just in case it's going off screen. Whee. Maybe. Oh, there. Okay. Installing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, great. Now go back to your README again. And then do 3 backticks with bash. And then you don't want to put a space after the backticks. It's going to be right next to the backticks. Yep. And line break. And then just the word Vercel. Yep. And then line break, and then 3 backticks. Okay, and then try running that in here. Now this is going to ask you to do a couple things because we haven't done this before. It's going to have you probably log in and stuff like that. I would not put those instructions in this because you already said you need to log in and do that. So you can kind of assume people are going to kind of make it through this, and that if they can't, that's kind of like on Vercel to document that correctly. But this looks like this is going to be like extremely simple the way this works. Great. Now go back to your terminal and see what happened.
Yay.
Okay, so now it's going to ask you to set up and deploy this thing. So you're going to just hit return because yes is the default answer you want. You want to use Teach Jenn Tech. Yep. And then we don't want, let's not link this to an existing project. So let's select no. And then, yep, that's good. And that's good. So that's saying like your project is in this folder that you're in right now. And then what that is doing is it's giving us a kind of default build steps. So those are going to be good. So no, you don't want to modify these settings. So just hit return again. Great. And there's a flag -- confirm that I think that will have you just like answer all the defaults automatically. And it would just like deploy it straight for you. But it's good to walk through it a couple times so you know what you're doing. Sometimes it's not always exactly the same, especially the build step part. See how it says Vite and Vite build? So that's Vite specific. If you did this with create React app, that would not say Vite build. It would be something else. Okay. See if you want to see if you can go to that link now. My React app KOL. There you go. There's your website. So now what I would do is I would go back to my README and write open, and then I paste that link. So you would link to that.
Right, I got to do the square brackets.
Ben was telling us that sudo stands for super user do, where super user is a word for admin. Sounds about right.
I dig it. All right.
Excellent. Make sure there's a period at the end. Okay. That should be pretty much it. Now copy paste that whole thing and put it back into the gist so we can see what it looks like all together.
You
can edit it now. Yep. And when you copy paste it, you're gonna have a bunch of extra lines at the end, I think. So delete those. Yep, and update public gist.
Whoa. Well, that was fun.
So now you will have this gist for the rest of your life. And anytime you want to deploy a React app to Vercel with Vite, you will open this and you will follow these steps and you will say prayer to the coding gods that they told you to write documentation.
This is happiness.
See, it's very useful, right? Not only for you, but for others.
I'm actually really glad because I'm doing the timing of like getting the of going back and working on like when I can work on getting the blogs written from the very beginning. So at least one episode is already done. The very first episode or the second episode. There we go. Interesting.
Oh, you should also get this project up on a GitHub repo. That was one thing we didn't do because Vercel lets you do that without needing a GitHub repo, which is nice, but this is a good step to do.
Teach me the things, please.
Go down to the bottom of this one. Let's go ahead and put it in the README too. That way you'll have it. And then make another 2-header that says create GitHub repository. Yep. And so what I would do here is I would say open and then link to repo.new.
Would you put repo.new and then put the link, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's different schools of thought around this, but I think that works pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm doing this wrong.
So it'll be an opening square bracket, yep, and then a closing square bracket at the end. Yep, and then you have to write that again, but with HTTPS in front of it, :// Yeah, and one step that's also useful to go through is go back through your gist at the end and click all your links. But let's not do that right now. That's just a hot tip for you. And then let's actually go to this link now and create a repo. Yep.
Whoa.
And you can just call it My React App again. Keep it consistent. Yep, and then give it a description.
And that's just the description we used up here, right? Or like this one?
Perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it can be public.
Yep, and you don't need to add a README because you already have a README. You don't need a git ignore because you already have a git ignore. Let's go ahead and create a license at MIT. Actually, no, sorry, let's get confuse it. Let's not do that. Hit the X on the top right, yeah, because then if we try and push the changes up because it's not in there, it's gonna get confused. But we'll add a license next time. Create repo. Okay, great. Now copy paste that whole chunk, the first chunk without the first or create a new repository on the command line. Take what's written under that and grab that whole thing. Yeah.
And then I just paste it in here, right?
No, so first go back to your README.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And then do backticks bash. Yep. Lowercase b. Yep. And then copy. And then delete line 1. Or the first line of that block.
Echo?
Yeah.
Because we already have that.
A README, yeah. But if you follow those ones exactly as are written, then you will have your thing deployed to that repo. Now, it's important, though, that in these commands, there's the name of this specific repo. So every time you do this, these commands are going to be all the same except for git remote add origin. That's a really important step where you actually link your repo to the repo you just created on GitHub. Does that make sense? So look at line 67 right now.
Yeah, so like
you see
basically
how Teach Jenn Tech is in that URL, right? So if someone followed these steps, they would not want to copy that command because they would then be syncing their project to your GitHub, not theirs.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone who uses this when they create it, they're going to have their own name in that right there. And they will have even their own name for their app, possibly, depending on whether they changed the name when they generated the thing at the beginning of the project. So that's a important thing. So this is why I always write these commands in just for myself, and I have them there so I can go back and I can do it over and over again. But that may potentially confuse people if you're expecting this material to be like super duper noob. So you should like possibly add a explanation in there saying, follow these steps with your own Git repo in this line or something like that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. And actually there's another mistake here. Where it says git add readme, that should be git add period. With it, yeah. Yeah, just like that. And then make sure to run that command again. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so what that does, if you just did git add readme, it would only commit that one file, but you want to commit your whole project all in one go.
Okay. I'm going to make myself notes here in a second.
And then
because
we
I
should
think
also reconfigure your Git so it does main by default. We can do that real quick. Okay, that's all good. So before we do anything else, let me just do this real quick. Go up to where in the terminal where it says git config -- global in your error message. So it's git config -- global and then .deep. Exactly. Yeah. So grab that whole thing all the way over to git config. Yep.
Okay.
And then paste it, and then delete that, and I'll also delete the brackets around it as well, and just write main, one word, all lowercase. What this is doing is now every time you create a Git, you initialize Git, you're going to start with main as the branch instead of master.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
then add the.
I'm making myself a note really quick.
We also, since you didn't say this, you didn't push these last changes up. So first, let's do that -- and then yeah. So yeah, let's like finish this, and then we'll commit it one more time before we're done. So don't worry about that yet. Write whatever you're gonna write, and then once you're done writing stuff in this, we'll commit it at the very end.
Okay, so this is.
You're gonna want to add a line break there after the code tick. So that's the thing where Markdown will work fine if you don't have these extra lines. But I try and keep it consistent and clean, because when you're going back and reading these, and like working with them, the more you can kind of like make it clean the first time, the easier it's going to be for others to work with and all that kind of stuff.
readme.md. Oh, all caps. Okay.
Yep.
That file. And then
this is great. Let me also show you something real quick. This is where you're going to want to put backticks around git add readme and git add period. So just a single backtick, because you're not doing a code block. Yeah, just a single one.
Okay.
And you'll even see it change in your editor right there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is really important and useful for when people are reading these, and both when you're going back and you're like, if you're copying things and stuff, you want to make sure there's a clear distinction between things that are like code stuff and things that are just normal wordy words.
And then
you also start by doing the backticks in the exec and then paste it in. Yeah.
Each
individual repo.
Okay. I was like, how do you say that? And I think
let's do this now. Hold on. There's something else we can do. This is perfect.
Just go back down to this really quick, because I just realized I could just put Jenn notes at the bottom, and then people can still use them.
You should make these bullet points also. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a dash before each of those, and then a space, dash, space. Yeah.
Yay.
And you should also you should make Jenn's notes its own header.
Okay. I'll use a 3. It doesn't need to be that.
Well, you shouldn't do 3 because it's not a subsection of the section before it. It's its own section. Yeah. And make sure there's a space after the
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
And you also see how it changes colors every time, whether the syntax is correct or not. So notice how it turned blue once you did that, but it wasn't blue before. Yeah, so that's important, because that'll help you like avoid making those kind of mistakes when you're writing this Markdown, because you can write Markdown and then like not really look at what it generates for a really long time. Then you end up with all this like weird stuff you messed up. That's why the editor's giving you a lot of like useful little hints here.
Use folder name as project name. I'm doing it for myself. So whatever I created the folder on, or no.
I always keep them the same. Like you don't necessarily have to, and like it'll kind of depend on your own just like style and stuff like that. But I like to keep the project name is always the same as the code folder name, which is always the same as the repo name, which is always going to be the subdomain of the website deployment of Vercel. Like I keep them all consistent across the entire thing. But for this one, that's partly because you're doing my React app. That's something that there's already hundreds or thousands in the world out there of that. So we couldn't get my React app.vercel.app. We have one with a bunch of numbers at the end. Now, if it said AJC's AJC dash React dash app, then it won't be taken. That's why AJC Web Dev, I have that in all of my project names. They all start with AJC Web Dev dash whatever the tool is that I'm doing or the project I'm doing. That way, all of them are stamped with something unique, so I can do that across the whole thing.
And then what? And I know that you said that we're going to upload this or recommit. Is I want to put that in here, like when I make changes on VS Code, make sure to do this to re-upload to.
That's one level that you probably aren't going to want to write down, because that's something that's like one of the very, very first things. Like, this is like kind of showing someone how to get to like the right folder, like telling me to like to commit on changes. Like, it's kind of like outside the scope of like almost anything you're gonna
That's
write.
why I put it in Jenn notes.
Okay, I mean, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I guess there's kind of a question of like, yeah, no, that's valid. Yeah, no,
I think like
you're make sure. So if you're reminding yourself,
yeah,
that's a good thing to remind yourself of, is that make sure to commit final changes and push to GitHub when you're done, or for the last step or something like that. Yeah, no, that's good. It's a good note to write yourself.
And what's the way to do it?
So this would be, so if you look at the first steps on GitHub, the first steps you have where you had to git init, so you don't need to git init again, because that just starts it being a Git repo. You do have to do git add period and git commit, and then you skip git branch because we already have done that, and also now your computer does that automatically for you. The remote is never going to have to be done again, but you will have to push each time. So it's the 3 steps: add, commit, push.
Hold on.
So first grab add and commit, or yeah, just grab all of them. And
well, okay, so this is a part where thinking back to results and where I've been getting really confused. If I want to download somebody's, or like do something to connect to somebody's Git or a repository I already have, I need to do git init and then that name. No. Okay.
Well, I mean, you might be able to do that. I don't know if I see that very often. Let's see. You can do that for template directories and stuff like that. But basically, if you want to connect to someone's Git repo, you need to clone it down. Like, you clone their Git repository onto your computer, and then you have it on your computer, and you don't run git init, because it's already a Git project. You don't need to initialize it again. So you clone it down, and then you enter it, and then you're in a GitHub project already.
I'm going to ask that a different time then. So let me
I might have misunderstood what
No. I think you're right. I think I'm just not comprehending yet, which...
Yeah, part of it is because something I can show you. Oh, no, so this is one where you're going to want to do this.
So we do the git add, we do the git commit, we don't do the main, and we don't do the branch, right?
Yeah.
We don't do the main, we don't, or this one, branch.
And so if I were you, I would put those in their own code block by itself, like the 3 backticks, because you're going to want to grab these commands like consecutively. So it makes sense for them to all be in their own code block.
Oh, code block. Okay.
Yeah. And then make sure get rid of that last one. There's one at the end of the git commit line. There you go. And then do a line break after the 3 backticks at the beginning, and make sure it says bash. So write bash and then hit enter. There you go. And then add another line break for 78. Or so add another line break in between the code block and there you go. And then actually where it says git push you origin main, it just has to be git push, because you already told it that the origin is main.
Okay.
And that has to do with connecting it to when you're pushing it, are you like, because there's a git thing on your computer, which is like just a git repo, and then there's a GitHub repo on GitHub, and so that's the remote. When they talk about the remote, they're talking about something that's on GitHub itself. It's like on the internet. To get it there, you need to like push it onto the internet. So that's kind of the most important thing. But I want to show you that there's a folder in your actual project. So go back to your Finder and open this folder up, and actually save first. Just OCD. Yeah, great. And like actually open this in your desktop, and then Anthony is cool, and make this a lot bigger so other people can see as well. Is that possible?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh well. So go into in Anthony's school. Actually,
I feel like there's got to be a way.
Yeah. So if you go to show view options towards the bottom, and then make it as big as you can. I don't think this is gonna be enough though. Yeah, it's gonna be barely any difference at all. It's a little better.
Okay. Well, we're working on it.
This is confusing right now because you have a project folder inside a project folder. You should take My React App and drag that out into the code folder.
It is. Oh. Well, I'm gonna leave it there for now because I don't want.
You should do this. Yeah. Yeah. And then delete Anthony is cool.
Okay.
And you can.
Whatever. I'll delete it in a second.
Delete it. Just, you don't want to, so click out of that. Just hit up arrow, then delete. And you can do Command D or Command Delete to delete. You don't need to use your mouse at all.
Oh, well, that just duplicated it.
Sorry, I mean Command D. I meant delete, the delete key.
Here we go. Got there.
Sweet.
Got there.
All right, now we're here. Press Command Shift period. There we go. All right. This is a thing that don't get taught to a lot of junior devs. It's extremely confusing. There are folders in this My React app that you were not able to see until you did that because they all have a period in front of them. Now that period is basically the stuff that's kind of happening under the hood. So you see how it says .git. So if you click that, this is what didn't exist when you ran git init. So when you run git init, what it does is it creates this folder right here. So if we were to delete this folder, don't do this. If you were to delete this folder and then go back to your project, it would no longer be git. You would not be able to see your changes. There would be no history of what you did, and you need to run git init again to reinitialize, and you could add and commit and do all that. So I end up deleting my .git folder anytime something weird goes on in Git, because there's like crazy Git foo you can do to get yourself out of jam. So sometimes just resetting and cloning a repo down and doing it again is actually going to be easier. But don't worry about whether to do that or not. The only thing that's important is to know that it's even possible to do that at all.
Yes, we had to fix my terminal by doing one of these, right?
Exactly. That's how we got rid of it. Yeah, that's how because your .zhs and .z profile and all that kind of stuff is also, those are dot files.
So I do remember that, but okay, cool. Yay.
Great. And so now let's make sure to push all these changes up unless you have more notes you got.
No. Well, if I do.
We're getting close to time. I should get going here.
Add. Commit.
Nice. And then since that's in the README of this repo, you should go back and delete the first gist. You don't really need this to be in a gist if it's in the repo itself.
Where's the gist?
So go up where in your tabs, it's your top #1 tab. So in like your browser tab of like not in the website at all. Yeah. Yeah, just delete that.
Oh, it doesn't add it. Oh, okay. Yeah. I get what you're saying then. Okay.
Great. Yeah, because otherwise, if you're trying to keep that in sync, like if you have a README for the same thing in 2 different places and you're changing one, not the other, you get confused very easily. So like keep everything in one place and not duplicated. That way, anytime you're making changes, you only have to make a change in one place. And so now anytime you want to add to this, you can go back to this repo, you can add more instructions, you can test those out, and then the instructions will still be there.
I created my first repository.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Oh, actually, there's one more thing we can do. Go back to the repository, like click on it, and then we're gonna go back to, or scroll down to where the link is for your website, like the actual website at the very, so scroll down to the very, very bottom. Yeah. And then click, or just above the repo.new part. Yeah. So grab that. Yeah. Copy that.
No.
Okay, copy the link.
Yep. Copy. Okay.
And then scroll all the way up to description or about, and click the little icon to the right of about. So over on the right side of your screen, about. Yep. And then paste it where it says website. except you got to have the HTTPS part in front. This is why you got to copy like the link itself. Yeah, great. And then save that. All right, and then try clicking the link.
Yay!
So now when they go to this repo, they can instantly see the website that is linked to the repo.
Yay!
Yep.
Oh, this is exciting. So much learning and just light years further than I was a month ago.
Totally.
It's crazy to think that that was only a month ago.
I know, right?
I mean, I have debated doing, 100 days of code, but I'm like, I do it 4 days a week. Does that count? And thank you, Anthony. I know you need to go. So thank you once again for all the knowledge drops. And this is exciting. This is actually really, really cool.
And hopefully, if you can come to enjoy the process, it'll be easier to do it and to do it consistently. And once you like kind of start to see the virtues of it, it's really awesome. To me, this is kind of like taking documentation and making it kind of more of like an iterative, reproducible thing. Because what a lot of people do is they'll write all this like code and then they'll like try and document after the fact. And that's like, it's really hard to do. There's like so much context you need, and you may just like do stuff without thinking about it. And then when you're going back, you like forget steps or anything like that. So if you do it this way, where you actually have to like write it down as you're doing it, as long as you write down everything you do, then you're guaranteed to get all the steps in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it, and so much more learning. So until next time, thank you.